Greetings, Covenant friends. My name is Steve Klimkowski, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer of the Evangelical Covenant Church. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to provide you with an overview of the approved budget for fiscal year 2021. Normally, I would have presented this budget at our annual meeting. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we were unable to gather this past year. We are incredibly disappointed by the cancellation of Gather 20, and we lament the loss it causes our community. Fortunately, our Constitution and bylaws give jurisdiction to the Covenant Executive Board to act on behalf of the Evangelical Covenant Church when the annual meeting is not in session. Accordingly, the board reviewed and approved a budget for fiscal year 2021. Before we get into the details, I want to emphasize that our budget is the product of many hearts and minds, including the Covenant Office's leadership team and the Finance Committee of the Executive Board. We are all emphatic about faithful stewardship. Covenant resources must serve the Covenant mission, glorify God, and honor the intent of our donors. If we do not steward well, we will not mission well. As you can imagine, this past year was a trying time to pull together a forward-looking budget. While our primary goal is always to sustain and advance the mission of the church, this particular budget also had to meet the challenges precipitated by COVID-19. Furthermore, we also aimed to reduce our growing reliance on reserve draws, a goal I noted in my 2019 year-end review. I am pleased to report that the 2021 budget successfully meets all three of these goals. The budget totals just over $17.5 million, a sizable reduction from the budgets of the last three fiscal years. The 2021 budget cuts over $2 million from the 2020 budget and over $2.5 million from our actual spend in 2019. Please note that the historical budget numbers in this graph are a bit different than those that were presented in our last annual meeting. These totals are the all-in annual spend of Covenant Mission and Ministry, which includes several items that were previously excluded from our budget reporting. The 2021 budget is the first in 5 years where the growth in spending is less than the growth in giving. The blue bars in this graph represent the year-over-year growth rate in total undesignated giving, while the orange bars represent the year-over-year growth rate in total expenses. Over the past 5 years, the annual growth rate in giving has ranged from approximately 1 to 2%, while the annual growth rate in spending has ranged between 2 and 5%. This is simply not sustainable. While we have other sources of income, giving comprises 2/3 of total income and is the primary source of funding for our mission and ministry. The Covenant Office's leadership team worked very hard to reverse this trend by prayerfully, thoughtfully, and deliberately cutting our spending to a level that remains well within our means. The new budget also significantly reduces our reliance on reserves. As I have noted in previous presentations, we have grown increasingly dependent upon our savings to balance our total budget. The bar graph on your screen details the amount of our annual deficit, ranging between $1.5 and $2.6 million over the past 4 years. These funding gaps were primarily the result of sizable extra budgetary expenditures. While these outlays were for good and essential investments, such as lay pension plan contributions and online giving subsidies for our local churches, the expenses pushed our total annual spend beyond our annual income. I am pleased to share that the 2021 budget reduces the required reserve draw to $574,000, a reduction of over $2 million from the 2019 budget. We aim to further reduce the size of this funding gap going forward. In fact, to help promote the necessary stewardship around this goal, the Covenant Executive Board recently passed a resolution requiring a balanced annual budget by fiscal year 2024. This table details the major categories of income and expenses in our budget and compares the new budget with the last 2 fiscal years. I want to highlight a few items for you. First, under income, we are projecting that total undesignated giving, our church support plus our individual donor support, will total just over $10.7 million in 2021, or 1% ahead of 2019. We are projecting a reduced draw on our Living Legacy funds due to significantly lower church planting activity. Paul Lessard, the executive minister of Start and Strengthen Churches, estimates that new church plants will total only 1/3 of normal activity in the upcoming year due to COVID-19. With Covenant Trust Company moving out of the 8303 building and into new offices in downtown Chicago, we will experience a decline in rental income. I should pause here and mention that several months ago, the Covenant Executive Board approved a resolution to sell the 8303 building. Covenant Offices is in the process of transitioning from its longtime Chicago-centered leadership model to one that is more geographically diverse and locally present. We are confident that distributing our mission teams across the denomination will benefit those we serve in 3 primary ways. First, the substantial equity we have in our headquarters building can be redeployed from bricks and mortar into mission. Secondly, a broader geographic distribution of our leadership team, as well as our denominational activities, will lead to greater covenant cohesion. Finally, the elimination of a relocation requirement for new hires will bolster our ability to attract and retain top talent. While these changes will significantly impact into our financials going forward, we did not model the sale of 8303 into the 2021 budget due to the uncertainty around the timing of the building's disposition. As I have already highlighted, the new budget significantly reduces our reliance on our savings to fund our total mission. The projected contribution from reserves is 70% less than what we budgeted in 2020 and 78% lower than the actual draw in 2019. Under expenses are the budget totals for each of our 5 mission priorities. In aggregate, we reduced those budgets by 13% versus last year. The shared services budget was reduced by 1% versus 2019's actual spend, which reflects remarkable stewardship given the amount of necessary ongoing investment in IT and operations, as well as upgrades in finance systems and advancement capabilities. And finally, we continue to provide $1 million in annual support to North Park University and the North Park Theological Seminary in support of their mission. So all in, the total approved budget for fiscal year 2021 equals $17,545,057, 11% lower than the 2020 budget and 13% less than the actual total spend in 2019. This table breaks out the composition of our mission and ministry budget into base mission expenditures and appropriations. This provides a view into the core budgets of our 5 mission priorities. In Start and Strengthen Churches, the $1.88 million in projected appropriations are funds we will invest in our local churches. In Serve Globally, the nearly $4.5 million in appropriations is comprised of the aggregated budgets of our global personnel and the funds raised in support of their missions. Our ministries are funded almost entirely by the faithful and generous giving of our donors and churches. We are so grateful for your support, especially over this past year of uncertainty and economic stress. We are committed to directing as much of your support as possible into the funding of our mission to join God in God's mission to see more disciples among more populations in a more caring and just world. The pie chart on your screen highlights that commitment. The green portion of the pie, nearly 2/3 of our total budget, is invested directly into mission and ministry. Together, we start and strengthen churches. We make and deepen disciples. We develop leaders. We love mercy. We do justice, and we serve globally. As a final note, I want to remind our churches who received a PPP loan that they must file with the government to receive loan forgiveness. Also, I humbly ask those churches who may have received PPP funds in excess of their actual need, please consider a tithe to the denomination. We continue to build out programs and resources in support of our under-resourced churches and pastors, and your tithe would help a great deal. As always, I deeply appreciate the trust you place in us to steward God's provision to the Evangelical Covenant Church. Thank you, and God bless you.